Hello everyone! Handa na ba kayo para sa ating panibagong teacher's serye? Kamusta na po kayong lahat dyan? Lahat ng ating mga subscribers at ang mga, syempre, kapwa nating guro sa department dito sa Pilipinas. Kamusta na kayong lahat? It's been a while. Alam ko po, medyo antagal na bago ako nakapag-post uli ng panibagong video. Pasensya na po kayo. Medyo na busy talaga si ma'am this past few days, weeks ba, or months na ba? Na busy talaga si ma'am. I hope I can have the time to tell you, ikwento sa inyo, imarites sa inyo kung anong mga naging kaganapan habang ako ay naka-stop sa pag-upload ng video. Anyway, andito na ulit tayo. So, welcome back again sa ating channel! At para po sa mga bago pa lang sa channel na ito, my name is Teacher Racky. I do videos about different documents and work that public school teachers here in the Philippines usually do. I also do reaction videos for some DepEd issuances. Nagpo-posting po ako ng iba't ibang day-to-day activities ng mga teachers and other lifestyle videos. Kaya kung hindi pa po kayo nakasubscribe, please subscribe to this channel. Malaking tulong po ito para sa akin at sa pag-grow ng ating channel to help more teachers in the Philippines. And don't forget to like this video if you do. And hit the notification bell para lagi po kayong notified every time magkakaroon tayo ng bagong post. Bago po yan, gusto ko pong samantalahin ang pagkakataon na to para magpasalamat po sa inyong lahat na sumuporta sa ating RPMS serye. Maraming salamat po. Kayo po nagbigay ng inspirasyon sa akin para gumawa po ng lahat ng ito. Sana po ay nakatulong sa ating lahat yung ating pong mga videos na nai-upload at syempre yung mga na-share natin na files. So, samantalahin ko na rin po ang pagkakataon para humingi po ng pasensya at dispensa dun sa mga kasama natin na hindi po nabigyan ng ating free template. Nagkaroon po tayo ng problema dun sa part na yun. Ano po, kasi nagre-request sila, magko-comment lang sa video na pahingi daw. Paano ko po i-send? Hindi po tayo pwede mag-send ng template or ng document sa YouTube comment box. So, dapat po, paulit-ulit naman po ako ng pagsasabi sa inyo na panoorin niyo po yung ibang mga serye, RPMS serye, kasi nandun po nakalagay kung paano mag-request. Ang pag-request po kasi ay mag-send po kayo ng email dun sa binigay ko pong email account, sa aking personal email account po. Dun po kayo mag-send ng request para alam ko po kung paano ko i-send sa inyo yung document. In fact po, lahat po na nag-send sa akin ng email ay nabigyan ko naman po ng template. Wala pong pumalya doon, lahat po yun. Ngayon, kung sa comment box lang po kayo magsasabi, there is no way po na makapagpadala ako sa inyo ng template o ng documents through comment box. Meron pa po na mga nagsisend ng request through my messenger account, Facebook account. Maraming salamat po for taking time and effort para hanapin po ang aking Facebook account. Ano po? Kaya lang ang nagiging problema po noon, kasi dahil hindi pa nga tayo friends, napupunta kayo dun sa message request or dun sa spam folder, which hindi ko po talaga laging binubuksan. You can imagine kung gaano po ka-busy yung ating messenger account, especially na during that time na tayo ay nasa modular pa. And ginagamit po natin sa classroom, ginagamit po natin sa sangkatutak na GC tungkol sa paaralan. Hindi na po ako nagkakaroon ng sapat na panahon para magbukas ng spam folder. Kaya madalas, magkakaroon ako ng pagkakataon, pagtingin ko mga 2 weeks na po na-send, 3 weeks na, 1 month na na-send, nahihiya na ako mag-reply. Kasi po, late na masyado. Pasensya na po kayo doon. Sana po sa susunod, kung magre-request po kayo ng kahit anong template or documents or kahit ano pong gusto nyong ma-share ko sa inyo, please do it on my email. Sa email po kasi, nasasagot po natin agad. At in fact, meron po ako nakakatulong na magbukas ng email ko para po mag-reply, para po mag-send ng email, ng response sa mga lahat po na nag-email. Ganun na lang po gawin natin. Ilalagay ko po uli yung aking email dito po para po sa inyong guidance. Kung meron po kayong tanong, kung meron po kayong request, pwede nyo pong isend dyan. Ano po? Dyan po magre-reply ako at tayo ay makakapagpalitan po ng ating mga ideas dyan. Anyway, paulit paulit-ulit po ako nagpapasalamat. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng sumuporta. At sana po ay supportahan niyo pa rin ako sa mga susunod pa nating videos. Because we are going to start a new teacher's series at this point. Para po sa video na to, sa serye na to, we are going to start the lesson plan serye. Ano na naman ba tong lesson plan serye na to? Marami po ako natatanggap ng mga request on doing videos about crafting lesson plan. So, nung pinag-aralan ko po, I decided to do a serye para sa lesson plan. Umpisahan po natin sa pinakaumpisa para mas madali pong intindihin ang lahat. Magkakaroon po tayo ng mga videos on understanding basic lesson planning according to DepEd Memorandum po yan. Ipapaliwanag din po natin kung paano gumawa ng mga 4A, 5As, 7Es, at yung pinakabago nating kaganapan, ang paggagawa ng ating weekly learning plan. Na dati po, during the modular or distance learning, ang ginagawa po natin ay weekly home learning plan. And since we are starting the face-to-face classes, face-to-face setup, ang gagawin na po natin ay ang weekly learning plan. Lahat po yan ay pag-uusapan natin sa serye na to, kaya umpisahan na natin. So for today's video, pag-usapan po muna natin ang pinaka-basic ideas about lesson planning. Ano po, I'm sure marami po sa atin, halos lahat sa atin, alam na po natin to bilang mga guro. Pero katulad nga ng lesson planning, we'll take this as a review. Re-reviewin lang po natin to check background knowledge or yung sinasabi nating stock knowledge about the new lesson. So parang ganon, start up po, warm up po para sa ating magiging lesson plan serye. So sabi nga po, a lesson plan is a roadmap teachers create to structure daily activity in their classrooms. So napaka-importante po ng lesson plan para sa ating mga guro kasi this will serve as our roadmap. Kumbaga sa mga maglalakbay, ito yung mga mapa na ginagamit nilang guide to make sure that they would end up to the right destination. So yun po yung purpose ng lesson plan sa atin. To make sure na ang ating goal for the day will be reached using our lesson plan. Another thing is that lesson plan outlines what students will learn during each class period, how the lesson will be taught, and how student progress will be measured. So lagi po nating tatandaan, ang purpose ng lesson plan is para magkaroon tayo ng outline kung paano natin masisiguro na that students will learn on each class period, paano natin to ituturo ang lesson, at paano natin masusukat ang naging achievement or learning ng ating mga estudyante for specific lesson. So typically, a lesson plan consists of the following parts. Number 1 is the learning objective. So the learning objective, dito po natin linalagay kung ano ang gusto nating ma-achieve na learning ng student at the end of the lesson. So usually, these objectives are related to content, knowledge, and competencies required for each lesson. Saan po natin ito kinukuha? We should be guided by the curriculum guide or just recently we have the most essential learning competencies. Doon po natin kinukuha to. Next one is the material. So in this part, the teachers will log the references and other learning resources that he or she use for the lesson. So ilalagay lang po natin dito ang mga resources na pinagkuhaan natin ng ating lesson. It can be in the form of textbooks o kaya yung mga learning student manual, teacher's guide na ginagamit natin, o pwede rin yung mga ginamit natin na self-learning module, or pwede rin namang if we get something from the internet. Next one is the learning activities. So these are the different activities that we outline on our lesson plan kung saan gagamitin natin para sa magiging pagkatuto ng ating estudyante. It could start with the review activity, priming or motivation, kasama po lahat yan, and all other activities that we include to make sure that we were able to transfer to learners the learning that they're supposed to have for the specific lesson. Next one is the assessment, another important part of lesson planning. On this part, gagawa po tayo ng mga activities or formative assessment to make sure na ang mga bata ay natuto for this specific lesson. So, how much they learn. This will let us decide if we have to do reteaching o kaya pwede na tayong mag-proceed sa susunod na topic based on the result of the assessment. And we have the last one, evaluation and reflection. So on this part, the teacher shall indicate special cases, which sometimes includes, but not limited to, continuation of lesson plan based on the assessment. So based sa naging assessment natin, pwede na ba tayong mag-move on sa susunod na lesson o kailangan nating i-reteach ang lesson na to? Kinulang tayo sa oras, we can have, or nagkaroon ng class suspension, dun po natin ilalagay. And for the reflection, this part is where teachers are required to reflect and assess with regards to the effectiveness of the lesson. Naging effective ba based on the assessment? Maganda ba ang naging result ng learning ng ating mga students? So, doon natin linalagay yun sa reflection. So, these are the basic parts of lesson planning. Regardless kung ano pang strategy yan, ito po ang basic na dapat nilalaman ng ating mga lesson plan. Ngayon po, tingnan naman natin ang nilalaman ng DepEd Order number 42, Series of 2016, which was issued June 17, 2016, entitled Policy Guidelines on Daily Lesson Plan Preparation for the K-12 Basic Education Program, wherein it is clearly stated that lesson planning is a hallmark of effective teaching. So sabi nga, effective teachers organize and plan instruction to ensure learner success inside the classroom. Yun po yung pinaka-importanting function ng isang teacher. And it is actually our way of visualizing a lesson before it is taught. Titingnan muna natin, this is the part kung saan we do prediction, anticipation, sequencing, and simplifying. Titingnan natin, we are looking forward. Ano kaya ang mangyayari if this has been done? Kung ito yung mga gagawin natin, anong pwedeng maging effect nito? So, these are actually visualizing a lesson. Dito tayo gumagawa ng mga learning targets para sa ating learners. And considering these learning targets, doon natin i-base yung mga activities that will guarantee us that learners reach those targets. And according to DepEd Order number 42, Series of 2016, a lesson plan is actually divided into 3 basic parts. So that part that we do before the lesson proper, and then after the lesson. So ano ba ang ginagawa natin before the lesson? This is also called the lesson opening or the beginning of lesson implementation. So bago yung actual lesson, bago natin umpisahan yung actual lesson, tayo ay gumagawa ng iba't ibang activities, including but not limited to the following. Example is the review of the lesson. Meron din tayong mga clarification concepts from the previous lesson na medyo nagkaroon ng difficulty yung ating mga students. We can also do something that would introduce the learners to the new lesson. We can also inform the class of the connection between the old lesson and the new one and establish a purpose for the new lesson. And another one, we can also state the new lesson's objective as a guide for the learners. The lesson proper, this is actually the middle or the main parts of the lesson. So, sa part na po to, the teacher presents the new material to the class. This is also the time when a teacher explains, models, demonstrates, and illustrates the concepts, ideas, skills, or processes that students will eventually internalize. So, dito na tayo nagbibigay ng lesson proper. Dito na natin binibigay sa kanila ang new lesson. Through demonstration, through explaining, illustration, at kung ano-ano pang mga pamamaraan para maibigay natin ang new lesson. And the last part is the after the lesson. This is actually the lesson closing or the end of the lesson. Ito po ay pwedeng gawin through different wrap-up activities. The teachers can provide a summary of the lesson o kaya ask students to summarize what they have learned. Parang generalization, So teachers can also ask learners to recall the lesson's key activities and concepts. Pwede natin silang tanungin kung ano yung mga parts, mga concept na natutunan nila. This part, or what we call the lesson closing, is actually meant to reinforce what the teacher has taught and be able to assess whether or not the learners have mastered the day's lesson. So, importante po that we make sure na nagkaroon ng mastery of the lesson. So, basically, the purpose of lesson planning is actually to answer the following questions. What should be taught? Ano ba dapat natin ituro? Ano ba ang dapat matutunan ng bata? How should it be taught? Anong mga pamamaraan ang gagamitin natin to make sure that learning will actually take effect? And then last one, how should learning be assessed? How can we make sure that the learners really learn the lesson? Now, let us try to review na rin the difference between DLP versus DLL as per DepEd Order number 42 series of 2016. So, the DLP, which means Detailed Lesson Plan, and the DLL, which stands for Daily Lesson Log. So, a Detailed Lesson Plan or DLP is a Daily Individual Lesson Plan. So, ito po yung isang buong lesson plan na ginagawa natin para sa isang subject na ituturo mo sa isang specific na araw. At sino po ang gumagawa ng DLP? Newly hired teachers without professional teaching experience should be required to prepare DLP for a year. So kung ikaw po ay newly hired teachers at wala ka pong professional teaching experience, kailangan po ang gagawin mo for your first year in service ay DLP or Detailed Lesson Plan. Another one are the applicant teachers as well as teachers in service including master teachers who will conduct demonstration teaching shall be required to prepare DLP. So kung ikaw po ay isang teacher applicant na kailangan mong mag-demo teaching, ang prepare po natin ay DLP. Ganon din po yung mga guro na nasa serbisyo na hanggang pati mga master teachers. Pag po tayo ay required to do demonstration teaching, ang ihahanda po natin ay daily lesson plan. Karaniwan po, we are required to do demonstration teaching during our classroom observation as part of the IPCRF cycle, o kaya po nagkaroon tayo ng lock session or inset kung saan nagkaroon ng demonstration teaching. So on these scenarios, ang pine-prepare po natin ay ang detailed lesson plan. Isa pa po ay yung mga newly hired teachers who earned satisfactory in the RPMS in a year shall still be required to prepare DLP. So kung ikaw po ay newly hired teachers, nakapag-service ka na po ng 1 taon, but upon the assessment of your RPMS o yung ating IPCRF, ang naging rating nyo pa lang po ay satisfactory, hindi pa po kayo nagkaroon ng very satisfactory, you will still be required to prepare DLP for the next year until such time po na malagpasan nyo yung satisfactory o magkaroon kayo ng very satisfactory na rating sa IPCRF. So pag-usapan naman po natin yung daily lesson log. Ang daily lesson log naman po, the difference between DLP and DLL, ang DLP po ginagawa natin individually per subject, per lesson, per day. Ang daily lesson log po naman, this is the lesson plan for an entire week. So meron po yan, may division po yan ng lesson plan mo for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So you can include your lesson plans for the entire week po sa isang DLL lang. Sino po ang gumagawa ng DLL? Those teachers with at least 1 year teaching experience, including experiences from private school and higher educational institution or HEI, can prepare DLL instead of DLP. So kung kayo po ay bagong teacher, kapapasok nyo lang, newly hired, pero meron kayong at least 1 year teaching experience po from private school o kaya HEI, you will be allowed to prepare DLL instead of DLP. Another one are those teachers who have been in the service for at least 1 year and are handling learning areas with available learning materials and teaching guides or teacher's guides provided by DepEd can use DLL instead of a DLP. So kung naka 1 year na po kayo in service and that you met the very satisfactory rating sa IPCRF, pwede na po kayo mag-stop gumawa ng DLP. you can now start doing DLL instead, provided na meron po kayong available learning materials for your specific learning areas, for your specific subjects. So let us try to look over the parts of a detailed lesson plan and a daily lesson log. Kung titingnan po natin, parehas lang po ang nilalaman ng detailed lesson plan at DLL. Ang pagkakaiba lang po talaga nila is that ang detailed lesson plan, you prepare one entire lesson plan for one subject for one day of teaching. Samantalang ang DLL ay inihahanda po for the entire week, Monday to Friday. So with this, let me share with you an example outline of a detailed lesson plan format. Ano po? So, of course, sa unahan, you have to mention the name of your school, your name as the teacher, the teaching date and time, para sa anong date and time ang lesson plan na ito, for what grade level, for what learning area, and what specific quarter of the school year. So we start with the first part, which is the objective. The objective, the lesson objective describe the behavior or performance teachers want learners to exhibit in order to consider them competent. It states what the teacher intends to teach and serve as a guide for instruction and assessment. So, yun nga po, ang linalagay natin sa objective is exactly what we wanted the learners to learn at the end of the lesson. So, this includes the content standard and performance standard found in the curriculum guide per learning area. So, madali lang po, sa objective part, ika-copy-paste lang po natin yung makikita nating content standard at performance standard mula sa ating curriculum guide o dun sa MELC, ika-copy-paste lang po natin for that, the objective for that specific lesson. Next part is the content. So this will include the topic or subject matters pertaining to the particular content that the lesson focuses on. Lalagay lang po natin dyan yung title ng ating lesson. And then number 3, learning resources. This is where teachers log references and other learning resources that the teacher will use for the lesson. So, ililista lang natin dyan ano yung mga ginamit nating mga learning materials para sa lesson na ito. That would include, siguro ilalagay na din natin curriculum guide, learner's manual, textbooks, kung gumamit tayo niyan, teacher's guide, kung mga website sa internet na pinagkuhanan din. Then, we're on to the fourth part, which is the procedures. So, ito na yung gagawin na natin dito, yung iba't ibang activities that we should include in the lesson plan to make sure that learning would happen. So, this is actually divided into many parts. This is the basic lesson plan. Ano po? Next time pag-aaralan natin kung paano ini-implement dito sa procedure yung iba't ibang strategies katulad ng 4A's, 5A's, 7A's of lesson planning. So for this specific video, pag-uusapan natin yung most basic, kauna-unahan natin ginagamit noon pa. Okay? So part ng procedure, letter A, is reviewing previous lessons. Ito yung review part, which would allow you to connect the lesson with learners' prior knowledge. Letter B is establishing a purpose. Motivate the learner to learn the new lesson. So, ito yung tinatawag na motivation part. Yung part kung saan we wanted our learners to be interested in our topic. Letter C is the presenting examples. So, it shows instances of the content and competencies. So, pwede tayong maglagay dyan ng mga examples, a video lesson, a video, or printed materials na magpapakita sa kanila kung what they expect, what would they expect in the next lesson. Letter D, discussing new concepts. So, this leads to formative assessment. So, pwede na tayong mag-discuss dito ng ating bagong lesson which would help them with the formative assessment. Letter E, continuation of the discussion of the new concept. So, ano pa yung pagpapatuloy or pagpapalalim pa ng ating mga discussion. So, it deepens the lesson and show learners new ways of applying learning. Letter F is developing mastery. This can be done through more individual work activities such as writing, creative ways of presenting learning, dramatizing, at marami pang iba. So on this part, we as teachers would like to make sure that students would gain mastery of the lesson. Then letter G, finding practical applications of concept and skill in daily living. So ito na yung application part. Paano gagawin ni teacher na mararamdaman ni student that the lesson is important in their daily life. Yung application na sa kanilang daily life. And then letter H, making generalizations and abstractions. So dito na yung abstraction part kung saan the teachers would help students arrive in a generalization or summary by, for example, asking questions of the different concepts that they have learned from the lesson so that they would be able to arrive sa sarili nilang salita, on their own words. They would be able to arrive to the summary of the lesson or generalization. Letter I is evaluating learning. So this is a way of assessing the learners and whether the learning objectives have been met. So ito na yung evaluation. This is where we do formative assessment. So ina-assess natin if we were able or the learners were able to learn what we wanted them to learn as stated in the objective part. And then the last one is the additional activities for application or remediation. So, pwede tayong maglagay dito ng assignment, di ba? Follow-up activities para sa kanila at home para magdagdagan pa ang kanilang kaalaman or kasanayan. And then the next part of the lesson plan, part 5, is the remarks. This is where teachers should indicate special cases including but not limited to continuation of lesson plan to the following day in case of reteaching or lack of time or class suspension. So magkakaroon tayo dito ng remarks kung nagkaroon ba, natapos ba ang learning, natuto ba ang mga bata, ilang % ng mga bata ang natuto. Do you think it is enough to move on to the next lesson sa susunod na schedule or sa susunod na araw? Or kailangan mong mag-reteaching dahil hindi naging ganun ka-effective. Maaaring hindi naging ganun ka-effective ang ginamit mong strategies. Pwede kang gumamit ng iba pang strategies to make sure that the learners would gain mastery of the lesson. Which leads to reflection, wherein this part requires teachers to reflect on and assess their effectiveness. So, pwede mo din, itong part na to is where the teachers would reflect, gaano ako naging effective? Gaano naging effective yung mga ginamit kong strategies for this lesson? Pwede ko bang gamitin ulito? O baka naman hindi ito applicable for my specific student? Should I change? Should I try another activities? Another strategies? So, yun yung ilalagay natin sa reflection. So, typically, ito ay ang tawag doon, in written form, our reflection. At ito naman po ang example ng ating daily lesson log as per appendix in the DepEd Order number 42 series of 2016. Doon po natin yan makikita. So, dito po sa example na ito, nakikita nyo naman, on the first column, ayan po yung mga parts ng ating lesson plan. Then we can actually fill out each column according to our lesson or subject areas per day. So, sa isang daily lesson log po, pwede na natin ilagay dyan ang ating weekly lesson plan. So, andyan na po. So, dahil nga isang linggo na to, hindi na to kasing detalyado ng ating detailed lesson plan na pang isang araw lang. So, usually dito, linalagay na lang natin mga key concept, hindi na detailed. Kasi nga, we have to include here lessons for the entire week. So, madalas, mga shortcut, mga basic concept na ang linalagay na lang natin dito sa daily lesson log as a guide para sa ating pagtuturo. So, these are the different parts of the daily lesson log as per or DepEd Order number 42.